Hi, my friends. It's Pastor Sarah Stobie. This is Biblical Lit, and this is week 12. Week 12. This entire week is reading from the book of 1 Samuel, which, if you haven't been reading much of our Biblical Lit, and I understand that, 1 Samuel, though, is a great book to get reintroduced into reading. So if you stopped reading maybe in Exodus, and certainly I understand in Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers, you were like, I'm just going to watch you. I'm just going to watch you, Pastor Sarah. I understand. I really do. Maybe Joshua gave you nightmares. I understand that as well. But 1 Samuel reads like a novel. It reads well. It's not terribly complicated. And it follows the storyline of Eli and Samuel and Saul and David and all of the intrigues and the battles. The story of David and the Goliath is this week. Just everything is in this reading, and it's too much for me to cover. So what I wanted to cover today, assuming that you're going to do some reading, and I hope you do because it's really rich with the story. I want to talk to you about who is Eli, who is Samuel, and how did they work with Saul being first king and then David. So Eli and Samuel are in charge of the ark. Now, you might remember from Exodus that God had Moses construct the ark, and I know you're thinking Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that's fine because it's a good visual of how it looked. The ark was this, you saw it in the movie. It was carried by poles, and it was this box with these golden wings on it from the angels. And inside the ark were kept originally the first 2 tablets of law, which were the first 10 commandments, among some other things from the tabernacle. And this ark and the tabernacle moved with Israelites, with the Hebrews, throughout the whole wilderness, right? And God was a pillar of cloud during the day over the ark, and God was a pillar of fire over the ark at night, and they literally followed the ark. Now, sometimes we get lost in that. We forget that part of the story, but as the Israelites are wandering for 40 years in the wilderness, the desert, they are following the ark, and the ark is a symbol of God. It's a symbol of God. And it was they believed in their heart that as long as they followed the ark, whether it was into a new land or into battle, that they would win. So what does Joshua do? He takes the ark. He moves the ark, and the ark goes with him into battle. You might remember reading that in Joshua. Here we have the ark stationed. It's stationed in a place, Shechem is one of the places, and it's stationed, and Eli is the main priest overseeing the tabernacle and the ark, okay? And Samuel is his protege. He's the young boy who was given to him at 3 years old to serve God. And what is he supposed to serve? He's serving in the tabernacle. He is serving as a high priest for Israel, taking care of the tabernacle and the ark. So in our readings, we hear a lot about the ark, and we hear a lot about how the ark is moved and how the ark is even taken away from Israel, which was a shame, and how the ark is then received back, and how Samuel is in charge of that. And when Saul as king goes into battle, he needs Samuel's approval to get the ark with him. Okay, now does that make sense? He needs the priest, the head priest, to give him the permission for what he needs to do, so that way he will have the ark ahead of him in battle and he will win. And what he loses is the favor of God and Samuel when Saul sins. When Saul sins, and you'll read about that, I know, but when Saul sins and Saul doesn't follow the commands of God given to him through Samuel, he loses the ark. Okay? He loses it. And he loses having that tie with God to always be successful. And suddenly Saul finds himself, and there's several chapters of this, Saul loses his ability to be called king. He remains king after David has been anointed, but the anointing basically says, you're going to be King David, and you are king in God's eyes, but we still have Saul out there to deal with. And David's not willing to kill Saul. I hope you see that. David is not willing to kill Saul so that he can step up and to be the king. He's not willing to do that. David and Jonathan have this relationship too, and David doesn't want to kill Jonathan's dad so that he becomes king faster. David has some patience here, letting things play out as they will. But it's all about God's favor. It's all about God's ark being with the army of Israel to defeat the enemies. So that's kind of how this runs. First you have Eli, then you have Samuel. Samuel's with Saul. Samuel anoints David as well. And then when David is in place as the king, Nathan becomes the liaison, if you will, between God and between David. And it's always meant to be this way. The kings were not supposed to be they weren't supposed to be God. They were supposed to be king over the people, but they were to serve God first. They were not to serve themselves. They were to serve them first. Now, as we get into the story of David, we also will see that David loses his way too. We'll see that. And we will see how David sets up the problem that we will encounter with Solomon as well. But I just wanted to explain this to you about the ark and about how Samuel represented God to Saul, and how Saul and Samuel had a good relationship until Saul let power get to him, and then he stopped doing exactly what God told him to do. And by doing that, he lost favor. It's kind of a soap opera. Most of the Old Testament is. So I do hope that you read through it. To this week, we're reading 1 Samuel 4 through 24, which is a lot. I know it is, but it reads really, really well. And it's really a story about 4 men and how these 4 men shaped what would become the kingdom of Israel. And the 4 men really are Samuel, Saul, David, and then following David would be Solomon. So I do hope you read it, my friends. This is a short vlog. That's just me setting this up for you. And I do hope that you have any comments or questions, put them down below, or just email me and I'll try to respond to you personally, or maybe through another vlog. And if you haven't yet, do check out my previous vlog, which was 11.5, which was on the book of Ruth. And I hope you enjoyed that as well. Until next time, bye-bye.